Good evening and welcome to The Problem of Being Awake. My name's Ben, I'll be your host. And I wanted to talk about something on just a purely factual level here. It involves transgenderism and the modern day trans craze, or trans mania as I call it. But I'm just going to speak from a factual point of view here, because what's going on is not right. What's going on at the moment is child butchery. So I want to explain how we got there. For 35 years, a lot of study was done in the Netherlands and Belgium over transgender individuals. And gender dysphoria was a recognised mental health disorder. It was sort of declassified in 2013 by a small European movement, but was officially declassified as a mental health disorder in 2019. And you can see what's happened since then. It's gone out of control. So my whole point is that box should not have been opened. It was very questionable of the WHO to declassify mental health with no new evidence and no new reports and no reason. And that's still under question. That's still under looking into. And they have multiple NGOs that they spread the information from. So they funded and spread queer theory, transgender hour. They sponsor critical race theory for children to to engage them in things they shouldn't be engaged in, over-sexualize them, invite the idea of that queer is big cool, and invite the idea of gender dysphoria really, and confusion about gender. Now, at that point, 0.004% of people had gender dysphoria. Now, the amount of people who identify as trans is as a minimum. I'm just using the minimum here. The previous is the maximum estimate that suffered with it when it was a mental health disorder. And now, every country has at least 1% of it identifying as trans. That's not possible by anything but psychological means. So it's a mixture of brainwashing and then the acceptance of it in our schools as something that could be discussed and taught and dealt with young minds that aren't formalised. They're not at the age of 10 or 12 or 13 or 14 that you're still sponge-like. You don't fully develop till you're 35, but after 21, you've got most of the way. But in your formative years, certainly anyone under 16 can't make an informed decision, and even a 16-year-old won't make the best decision. So it used to be you had to be 18. When it was a mental health disorder, you had to be 18, you had to be diagnosed with it, and you had to have therapy with it. Now for 85%, across all this time, 85% or more stayed in the same body. Very, very often engaging in same-sex relationships. So their confusion was their sexuality, not their gender, which is why there were no real mistaken gender surgeries where we've got people detransitioners. There are few, but they're very few compared to the new amount of people who've just transitioned and want to transition immediately back. And that's because these people made their decisions given all the therapy, all the information about the procedure, knowing how elective it was and how it's only successful once in every 2 trans surgeries. And they went through it anyway. They took the cross-sex hormones, but they didn't need to take the puberty blockers because they'd gone through the only thing that can define whether a change of anything like that is right for you is puberty, because that's when your sexuality comes out. And that will point you in a direction, and whichever direction it takes you in, that's the journey you'll go on. Without puberty, children don't get the chance. And there's a massive industry there of puberty blockers, the pharmaceuticals, the trans activists and the trans surgeries are making a whole load of money off butchering young adolescents who've been brainwashed into thinking that they need to be something else when they're not. Because as I said, 85% used to saying the same thing. We didn't have gender-affirming care. That wasn't a term because we didn't need a nice term to replace child butchery, which is experimental surgery on a child that will scar them for life, is going to be successful once in every 2 times, makes them completely infertile, and they're given drugs that they give to rapists in prison to make them infertile, and they're also told they'll never probably experience any sexual pleasure. Now, a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old has never really experienced sexual pleasure anyway. But if you say that to an 18-year-old, they go, hold on, I've enjoyed some sexual pleasure. I might change my mind on this. Maybe I'm a lesbian. Maybe I'm gay. That's really how it all should have played out. The Haas report in Britain is the most comprehensive report done into trans surgery. And it says at the moment it is shady, it is experimental, and it is not acceptable. And when that report came out in England, bang, stop. You had to be 18 to get a sex change. But in other parts of the world, no, it's still going on. There's a black market for it, and there's so many states in America where they still do it, and they still talk about trans rights. Trans women in sports. If you were born a biological male and you went through puberty, you are 25% stronger, have 25% better reflexes. You hit the ball 30 to 40% harder. You punch 20 to 30% harder or more. And that's, if you wanted to know how insane that world has got, I'll come on to that, because that will be how I'm going to end this. The other thing to look into is the WPATH leaked files. This is the World Professional Association of Transgender Health. And Michael Schellenberger, another journalist, managed to get 120 pages and a video which showed them as to be not holding the qualifications they claimed to have been, yet they've been advising transgender surgeries all around Europe and the US and the UK. All of our advice we took from this WPATH, one of whom's directors has a fetish for cutting off little boys' genitals, which he's now allowed to practice publicly. And there are other really terrible things in that video about them trying to saying, well, I think he's got borderline personality disorder. I think it's schizophrenia. I don't think this person really knows what's happening to it. And they're on video saying, did he sign a consent form? Did his parents sign a consent form? Well, then it's none of your problem what happens afterwards, is it? So go ahead and do it. And they were putting pressure on him to do it when he knew the kid was mentally unfit. Almost every kid who's been transitioned has had some other type of mental disorder with it. It's a lot of autism, a lot of ADHD, and a lot of depression and anxiety as well. So a lot of it is a mental health disorder as it used to be. And now we declassified it, and it's become trendy, and it's become a destructive part of our way of being, of our social contract with each other, because they're not tolerant of anybody but themselves and this new trans mania. And they make the original people who fought for trans rights, people are more transphobic to them now because of these new ones who scream in your face that you have to accept their identity. I'm sorry, I don't. I reject it. Being a woman is much more than just a thought. And you can't go into a woman's space, and you can't hit a woman. And I'll leave it on this. If it's not gone too insane already, how is it that the gold medal female boxing fight was between 2 biological males having beaten up smaller women who couldn't take the punches? One had to give up in 43 seconds, and they were in the final, having beaten up a load of women who could perfectly have competed against other women, but could not compete against them. Massive domination in strength and height. It was awful to watch, and it was so bad for women, and this movement is so bad for women. So I'll leave it there. I'll say the current gold medalists and silver medalists for female Olympian boxing are both biological males. We don't need to go any further into the nuts woods on this one. So I'll leave it there. You be lucky, I'll be good, and I'll see you soon.